Store-bought canvases are generally crap. So I've put together a video for you guys to show you how to make a linen and oil ground canvas, something that'll make sure your paintings last for a long time. Enjoy. First step is getting the stretcher frames together. So you just want to fit them together, and one thing you really need to make sure of is that these things are square. And you'll see me do this with the carpenter square here in a second. And once I get this square, I will be stapling the corners together just so I know they're not going to be moving around too much. Once we have this done, we can move on to cutting out our linen. Want to make sure you leave enough room on the sides to actually get your stretching pliers. Enough room to grab onto, really. Otherwise, you're going to be fighting this thing to get it actually stretched. And trust me, I've made that mistake before. So I'm stapling the corners down just to keep it in place before I start stretching. And now I'm going to actually start the stretching process. Now you start in the center and you work your way out. You want to go around all sides before you really start moving down the stretcher bars. And once you get those 4 center staples in, now you could just go along and stretch each side, working opposite sides as you go. This will get your canvas nice and flat without too many creases. Now this is raw linen, so there will be some fold marks left in it, but those will come out with the gluing. I'm just finishing up the corners here. I'm going to fold those over and staple those as well. And then we'll move on to the gluing. Now to make rabbit skin glue, I used a 10:1 ratio. So that's 1 part rabbit skin glue, the dried granules, soaked in 10 parts water. And then after the granules have soaked up the glue, you slowly heat it. You don't want to let this boil or ruin the glue. And this will create a nice size for your canvas. And I'm just going to apply this evenly over top of the canvas. This is the first layer. I'll actually be putting 3 layers of this on here. Just to make sure that I fill in all the holes. This seals up the fibers so that the oil ground that we put on later and the oil paint the oil doesn't leach into the fibers of the linen, because it'll start to degrade that over time. I'm just making sure I get the edges here as well. And if you can listen, that tightens it up like a drum. There's nothing quite like rabbit skin glue to tighten up a linen over stretcher bars. So over top of this, we're going to be putting our ground. And I'm starting off with fine artist grade chalk. And I'm adding in my pigment to give it color. Now I want this to be sort of a reddish orange color, so I'm adding in that. I've also added in some titanium white because the chalk alone is very transparent and we want it to be opaque. We want the light to be able to bounce off of this behind the paint. So I'm just mixing this up good before I add the wet ingredients, which would be linseed oil and a little bit of liquid original, which my camera apparently didn't record. But you want to get this to a nice consistency, somewhere around mayonnaise. You don't want it to be too runny or it's just going to fall right through the weave of this canvas. So we're going to start spreading this out with our large palette knife. And actually this is a cake frosting knife. I find these work really well. They're flexible and they help you get in there without getting your knuckles dirty. We want to fill in all the nooks and crannies here. We want to get into the weave of this canvas and then scrape off as much as we can. We really want to only leave this ground in the gaps in the weave. And we're going to do this 2 to 3 times to create a nice smooth surface. Now don't worry if you have a little bit of weave showing through later on. It all depends on how thick the weave is on your canvas. But trust me, this is a great surface to paint on. So if you like this video, remember to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more educational videos on classical painting.